I am Ilger. In this series of 10 popular American classics, let's talk about Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Mark Twain was an American writer, humorist, entrepreneur, publisher, and lecturer. He is best known for his two novels, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. He is recognized as one of the greatest American writers and is often referred to as the father of American literature. Mark Twain's real name was Samuel Langhorne Clemens. He was born on November 30, 1835, and grew up in Hannibal, Missouri, a small town on the banks of the Mississippi River. Twain's mother Jane Lambton Clemens was a homemaker. His father John Marshall Clemens was a judge, lawyer, and farmer. Mark Twain married Olivia Langdon in 1870, and they had 4 children together. Twain began his career as a printer and journalist before turning to writing. He gained national attention in the 1860s with his humorous essays and stories, and his best-selling travel book, The Innocents Abroad. He also wrote several novels including The Prince and the Pauper and A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, as well as numerous short stories and essays. On April 21, 1910, he died in Redding, Connecticut, at the age of 74. Mark Twain's novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, was first published in the United Kingdom in December 1884 and in the United States in February 1885. It was originally intended for adult readers, however, it soon became a popular children's book. The story is set in the southern United States during the mid-19th century, before the Civil War. It is narrated by the main character Huckleberry Finn, a young boy living in St. Petersburg, Missouri. In the story, Huck's father is an abusive alcoholic who is never around, so Huck is mostly left to fend for himself. Huck befriends a slave boy named Jim, who is owned by Widow Douglas and her sister Miss Watson. Jim has run away from their plantation, hoping to make his way to a free state and buy the freedom of his family. Huck agrees to help Jim escape. They find a raft and an entire house floating down the river. Inside, Jim finds a body that has been shot. Huck sneaks into town and discovers that there is a reward out for Jim, who is suspected of killing Huck. Huck and Jim embark on a journey on their found raft down the Mississippi River. Along the way, they encounter various people and have a series of adventures. They come across a grounded steamer where 2 thieves are discussing murdering a third. Realizing that their own raft has drifted away, Huck and Jim flee in the thieves' boat. After they find their own raft, they then sink the thieves' boat, keeping their loot. Huck and Jim are somehow separated in a fog, and when they reunite, Huck tricks Jim into thinking he dreamed the entire incident. On the riverbank, Huck meets the Grangerford family, who are engaged in a 30-year feud with the Shepherdson family. Huck eventually escapes and is reunited with Jim. Throughout their journey, Huck struggles with his conscience, torn between his loyalty to Jim and his fear of breaking the law by helping a runaway slave. Huck's moral dilemma comes to a head when he has to decide whether to turn Jim in or help him escape when they are separated by a series of misunderstandings. When 2 white men seeking runaway slaves come upon the raft, Huck lies to them and they leave. Jim and Huck realize they have passed Cairo. With no way of getting back upriver, they decide to continue downriver. Huck and Jim meet a group of con artists who call themselves the Duke and the Dauphin, who join Huck and Jim on their raft and proceed to swindle people they encounter on their journey down the Mississippi River. Huck and Jim become unwitting accomplices in their schemes. Eventually, the Duke and the Dauphin's schemes are exposed, and they are run out of town by an angry mob. As Huck escapes, he finds that the swindlers have sold Jim to the Phelps family plantation. Huck vows to free Jim, despite believing he will go to hell as a consequence. The Phelps family mistakes Huck for their nephew Tom, who is expected for a visit, and Huck plays along. It turns out their nephew is Tom Sawyer. When he arrives, he plays along with Huck's story and develops a theatrical plan to free Jim. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn has many fun and humorous parts that show Huck's mischievous personality and his pranks, such as the time he fakes his own death and hides out on an island, or the time he dresses up as a girl to find out information. Additionally, the dialogue and dialect used by the characters, particularly Huck's unique Southern accent and slang, can also be entertaining and amusing for readers. For example, when Huck describes the Grangerfords and Shepherdsons, the two feuding families, as both having about 5 million dogs, and all the little pups and big pups generally used to get up and howl at midnight. Another humorous description is when Huck and Jim come across a group of thieves in a house, and Huck disguises himself as a girl to gather information, but ends up being asked to try on a dress and undergarments, causing him much embarrassment. In the novel, there are many memorable and colorful passages, such as, "The sun was up so high when I waked that I judged it was after 8 o'clock. I laid there in the grass and the cool shade thinking about things, and feeling rested and rather comfortable and satisfied. I could see the sun out at 1 or 2 holes, but mostly it was big trees all about, and gloomy in there amongst them. The river was not high, so there was not more than a 2 or 3 mile current. Hardly a word was said during the next 3/4 of an hour. Now the raft was passing before the distant town. 2 or 3 glimmering lights showed where it lay, peacefully sleeping, beyond the vague vast sweep of star-gemmed water, unconscious of the tremendous event that was happening. It's lovely to live on a raft. We had the sky up there, all speckled with stars, and we used to lay on our backs and look up at them, and discuss about whether they was made or only just happened. I was trembling, because I'd got to decide, forever, between 2 things, and I know it. I studied a minute, sort of holding my breath, and then says to myself, all right, then, I'll go to hell, and tore it up. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." Several film adaptations of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn have been made that include: directed by Richard Thorpe and starring Mickey Rooney in 1939. Directed by Michael Curtiz and starring Eddie Hodges and Archie Moore in 1960. Directed by J. Lee Thompson and starring Jeff East and Paul Winfield in 1974. Directed by Stephen Sommers and starring Elijah Wood in 1993. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn explores various themes, including the individual versus society, the hypocrisy of civilized society, the corrupting influence of greed and wealth, and the search for freedom and identity. One of the central themes is Huck's moral development as he learns to question the values and beliefs of the society in which he has grown up and come to his own conclusions about right and wrong. The book also explores the theme of racism, as Huck is forced to confront his own prejudices and make difficult moral choices regarding his relationship with Jim, the runaway slave. The book has been both praised and criticized for various reasons. One of the main criticisms is the use of racial slurs and derogatory language towards African Americans. Many argue that this language is offensive and inappropriate, and it detracts from the overall message of the book. Regardless, the book has been embraced as a classic of American literature and has become a staple of many school curriculums. The recommended age for reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is generally considered to be high school students, typically 14 to 18 years old. Overall, the book continues to be widely read by both adults and children, and its impact on American literature and culture cannot be denied.